Hey, JD here. Welcome to the Mead House. You know, over the past several years, we've brought you over 125 episodes of mead making, education, information, and entertainment. More than 80 guests have stopped by the Mead House. Professional mead makers, medal-winning home mead makers, competition organizers, experts on yeast and honey specialists have all visited to share their knowledge. The Mead House is produced for home mead makers and brewers looking for a bit of inspiration and information from the many guests and discussions we have here at the house. You can help support the Mead House by joining the Mead House Keyholder Club on Patreon. Just go to patreon.com and search for the Mead House. There's also a link in the show notes. For as little as $2 a month, you can become a key holder. We've teamed up with some great companies to provide thank you gifts for your support. So get on over to Patreon, join the Mead House Keyholder Club, and get your own set of keys to the Mead House. Hey, you can listen to the Mead House podcast with your favorite player and be sure to rate us 5 stars on iTunes or your favorite listening venue. The Mead House. Mead making entertainment you just don't want to miss.
Hey, welcome to the Mead House, and thanks for listening to episode number 147. You know where to find us on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and there's just a whole lot of other places out there. They're all listed on the front page of the website, themeadhouse.com. Hey, the Mead House is produced for home mead makers and brewers just like you and me, looking for a bit of inspiration and information from all the guests we have here. And the discussions that we have at the house. Talk to us. We're on Facebook and Twitter, both at the Mead House. You can just simply email us at info@themeadhouse.com. I need to record that whole thing so I don't have to keep saying it over and over and over each week. But hey, what the heck? Hey, Jeff and Ryan are both in the house. My name is JD Webb. Ryan, back from a huge trip. Dude, you went gallivanting around town, the country, actually. Where'd you go this trip? I know you were out here before in California, Southern California, Northern California. Where'd you go from here?
I was moving. I was in town. I was just moving across town. I told you guys on the show that the Mead House North was moving locations, moving addresses. And that's what I was doing last week. I got all moved in to the new Mead House North. Had lots of help. I think everybody that helped, I gave them a piece of mead to if they wanted it. Thanks for the effort.
Yeah.
And now everything is in the new place, and the question is, how long is it going to take to unpack? And when am I going to get to that first batch?
Yeah, no kidding. Is that like the first thing out of the boxes or the last thing? Set up the kitchen first and then the brew house?
Somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. Hey, all right. Hey, in this episode tonight, there's a tool that every brewer must have in their toolbox if you have nothing else. All right. This one simple piece of equipment will tell you much about how well your fermentation is doing, which will lead to whether you are a success or a failure. There's quite a story behind Brady Instruments dating back to before the turn of the century. We'll get Brady Marzella to tell us about it. In segment 2, session meads, made to drink over and over in one sitting while allowing you to drive home as long as you can recognize red lights from green lights. Nah, just kidding. Hey, session meads. Hey, they're low alcohol. We're going to talk a little bit about them here tonight, and we'll tell you how to get there, along with a few recipe ideas. And in segment 3, I apologize we didn't get to many of them last week. I don't think we got any of them last week. Facebook friends, of course, this is where we try to answer questions with no formal expertise other than what we've experienced in our own brew house. But hey, all that and more here at the Mead House. Thanks to all the Mead House key holders who help keep. This is another one I need to record too. I keep doing this one every week. Let me start this one over again. Hey, all that and more here at the Mead House. But first, thanks to all the Mead House key holders who help keep the Mead House podcast free. You too can become a Mead House key holder and help keep the show free for as little as $2 a month. We've got some great thank you gifts that Jeff will send out to you. Get on over to patreon.com, search for the Mead House, or just click on the link in the show notes. And I promise they're always there. Hey, what are we drinking tonight? As usual, I'm going to start this one off. I'm drinking, in typical Mead House fashion. I'm doing it double fisted. Tonight, I'm drinking an offering from Sap House Meadery. Jeff, I got my box, dude. This stuff, this is the Ecstasy of Gold. And I'll tell you, oh my God, this stuff, Ash was thinking about me when he put this together. He had to have been. This is a wildflower mead that's aged in tequila barrels for 2 years, dude. And let me tell you something. Yeah. This stuff will blow you away. I mean, this stuff is outstanding. It's got a terrific wildflower honey aroma right up front. I mean, that's the first thing that hits you off the top. Man, I'm telling you, it just smells like a floral garden out there. And then the first few times I tasted it, it was so good. I just kept drinking it. And I thought, wait a minute, I got to slow down here. I want to be able to appreciate this like I do a good bourbon or a good tequila. And so I started very slowly, letting it wash over the tongue. And dude, let me tell you, I get the tequila barrel. I get there's a very light, almost mid to late palate. You start getting this light offering of a cooked agave. So that's coming out of that tequila barrel, the residuals. You get a mild barreled flavor coming out of it. Now, I don't know. I haven't talked to Ash since I got this. I'm assuming this is either out of a Reposado or an Añejo barrel. To my knowledge, Blancos are Blanco. They're not aged, at all. Reposados are aged up to a year. Añejos, anything after a year, up to 3 years. And then, of course, extra Añejos, 3 years or more. So this has got to be out of one of those 2 or 3 possibly barrels. And I tell you, this is just outstanding. So if you, a little plug here for Evan Henderson out there, dude. I know where you're at, man. I know you had a hand in this. The Ecstasy of Gold, this tequila barrel aged mead, dude, you got to pick some up. If you haven't already. Speaking of tequila, one of my favorite reposados is Clase Azul. Now the bottle is something that the wife will appreciate, Ryan. I know you had a good experience with a tequila that I turned you on to when you were down here on your trip, and we went out to dinner to a Mexican restaurant. This particular one I'm drinking here tonight is a reposado. It's a barrel aged, obviously, and it has tons of vanilla that comes through. You get a little bit of that charred barrel flavor coming through as well. It's out of a bourbon barrel, so you get a little bit of that shining through at the end. It's very, very smooth for a 40% alcohol. Clase Azul. Now the reason why the wife will appreciate this is because, Brian, when you're done drinking it, she can turn the bottle into a vase, because the bottle is actually a hand painted bottle, and it's just amazing. You can go to any liquor store that carries it and take a look. This is the Clase Azul Reposado. So that's what I'm drinking here tonight. Jeff, what do you got in your cup tonight, buddy?
So after last week's show, the day after, I went back on a keto diet. I am doing it low carb, and you guys remember from previous low carb diets I've done where I would come on the show and be like, I'm drinking coffee or tea. I'm not very happy about it, but I'm being good. Tonight I am drinking alcohol. I have 2 drinks in proper Mead House fashion, and they're both low carb-ish. One of them is Boulevard Beer Easy Sport. It's very light. It's one of these session beers. It's supposed to be refreshing. You can go mow the lawn, play some sports, have a beer, and not get stupid. It's also 4.5 grams of carbs, so that works out great for me.
Oh, yeah.
The other, so there's not a lot of hop aroma to this. There's a little bit of like citrusy flavor to it. It's very, very light. The flavor isn't where I want to be as far as like a regular drinking beverage, but it still beats the hell out of a Michelob Ultra for events like this where I want to drink but want to stay, try and keep close to that carb count. The other one is actually in honor of our segment 2 here. I have a session mead, kind of the leftovers from my cranberry holiday session mead. This didn't get back sweetened. It's kind of been the last little bit sitting on the lees. It is cranberry and mead, honey, but the honey has all been eaten out. If my calculations are right, a 12-ounce pour of this would run me about 4.5, maybe 5 grams of carbs, but I've got a little 3-ounce pour of it because that's pretty much all I had left. It doesn't taste good either. But I think as far as making a mead that I can enjoy while still kind of doing this diet, I'm 80-90% there. I just got to dial in the flavor and get that right.
There you go.
So, yeah.
Sounds good. Hey, dig those low carb, and we're not talking about CO2. We're talking about low carb here. Ryan, you're always good. The move. I would imagine the first thing that you would unpack would be that humongous freaking wine rack of yours, or that mead rack. What do you got in your cup tonight, buddy?
Yeah. So if you've been on any of the forums lately, you'll see a lot of mead makers showing off and saying they're drinking their vague meads. It's they say vague mead 1 or purple vague mead or golden vague mead, and they're doing that because there's some big competitions around the corner here, and they're paranoid about saying anything that might make their entries identifiable, but they don't want to not post what they're doing, so they just refer to it as vague mead. I'm drinking a vague mead tonight, but for a very different reason. Sometimes what I do to save time when I bottle is I bottle up a case and I label the case and I say, okay, so this is a lemon mead, or this is a Belgian braggot or something like that. And then I just I drink and I put the empties back in that case, and then maybe as I get down to the last lower than halfway and I want to kind of condense the cases, then I label the individual bottles. But it's just a little quicker way than labeling every bottle. And well, when I moved, things got a little bit jumbled. Cases, some cases provided some help, and some cases got condensed. So now I had unlabeled bottles in other cases, and then when people were helping me, pack or clean or fix stuff around the house, things like that before I moved, we drink some. So then the condensed boxes would then get condensed with other condensed boxes, and it basically became bottle roulette. So ever since we moved, I've been playing bottle roulette about every night.
Bottle roulette.
And I'm drinking a vague mead tonight from bottle roulette. Bottle roulette's a great game, by the way, because you win every time. There are no losers.
Yeah.
And so I'm drinking a vague mead tonight, and the reason it's vague is because it's from a condensed box that was then mixed with another condensed box, and I'm not really sure what it is. It's good. I enjoy it. It's very clean. It's very crisp. It's got some great flavor. But I don't exactly know what it is.
Yeah. So don't be asking for the recipe.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah. We will not be going over a recipe tonight of what's in my cup.
Yeah.
Well, as Zadie was mentioning, guest tonight, Brady from Brady Instruments. Brady, yeah, I am very sorry, Brady. I just got your information not too long ago, and I've been trying to catch up a little bit here. Yeah, he's been making equipment for quite a long time, for several years, and now is just getting the chance to play with some of that equipment and make some of his own batches. Welcome to the show, Brady, and what is in your cup tonight?
Oh, hello, guys, and thank you. Thank you for your welcome there. That was, I'll have to say, you guys are quite amusing. Some of these stories are truly genuine, I can tell. But in my cup tonight, I am sipping on, it's an IPA that we brewed ourselves, and it's a New England IPA, and it's Jeff, it's a very high carb mix right here for sure. There's no doubt.
Of course it is.
You made me think a little bit about what was in my glass here. I said, boy, oh boy, this is so chewy. I think this is like drinking a loaf of bread in the end. But we have, I have this we brewed, and we tried to mimic a one of our favorite New England IPAs to see how well we do. That's kind of what we've been doing. We try to just actually take one and try to mimic it and compare them. And I have two here sitting in front of me. One's the original, and one is what we tried to do, and it's pretty darn close, I'll have to say. We're kind of and as Ryan just said there, we've had the chance of making this equipment, making hydrometers and thermometers. We've been doing it for so long that we've spent the time building the equipment and haven't had the chance to really try it out. And just in the past couple years, we've teamed up with a couple of our brewing friends, and they've taught us the ropes and showed us different things that we need to do. And I come at it when we start the brewing process that my first question is, okay, when can we use the hydrometer? When can we? That's always my goal, is to start using it. And I've had a chance to, and it's actually really neat. We've learned a lot about our products, and we've learned how to better our products and bring you guys better equipment. Just in the research and development end of it. Yeah, it's kind of real neat to do. I'll tell you, it's an opportunity.
Before I let Ryan cut loose with the mic, 'cause I know he's got tons of questions and is always a good interviewer. Yeah. Guys, I want Brady. I was on their website, and if you go to BradyInstruments.com and go to their history, it's just a short couple of 2 or 3 paragraphs there. Brady, there is quite a history, a storied history to your outfit there, and it looks like it goes all the way back to your I believe your great grandfather.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Why don't you tell us briefly? Tell us the story about Brady Instruments and how it all got started.
Well, way back when, you had my great grandfather started a company down near Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
We're talking near the turn of the century or before, yeah, right?
The early 1900s. I think in 2005 was the established date of the company.
Yeah.
Now he started it, did a great job. He ran it right up into the 30s and 40s, and my grandfather, he took over, and then my father took over, and then that was about as long as you could contain a company before it started to get a little out of hand and people started pulling it in different directions. And when I was ready myself, see, I started working down there when I was just really a child. I mean, I'll have to say I was kicking around the place as a small boy. growing through that and learning the processes of building these things. I learned it before I was even an adult. And in doing that, it prepared me for starting my own business, because what had happened, you get a little greedy, people get a little funny, the company began to dissipate, and my father and I we found ourselves jobless, and it was basically our fortitude that had to get going and start a competing company at that point to try to just make a buck. I mean, we had one thing we knew, and we knew we could do it well. We just needed a chance to do it. So we started. I got out of school. We started. We dug at it. I mean, I'm talking 15, 16, 20-hour days. We did whatever had to be done, worked, and started the company. And I think that was in 96, 97, 98. It started to get better. Next thing you know, here we are 20-some years later, and we had the opportunity this year to buy out that original company that we were competing with, which brings it full circle, right back to the beginning of how this all started. My great-grandfather, he'd roll over in his grave and give me a high five if he could. I'm sure he would. And, my father, I'm so lucky, guys. I'm telling you, one of the coolest things in the world is being able to work with your father. My dad, he'll tell you he's in his 70s, but he's in his 80s, and he comes to work every day. Wow. And we sit here and we muddle through the tasks of actually building a business, and it's got to be the coolest thing ever. And I have some children, and they're coming along, and all of them, I believe if I wasn't around, I think they would be able to take over and keep the place running. And it's just an amazing story. It really is. And really, it just comes down to doing things the right way. We wanted to make a good product. We wanted to do it at a fair price, and we wanted to be customer oriented. We are competing on a global scale, and we want people to have good equipment. It's, it basically comes down to, you buy good equipment, good in, and it's good out. You use good tools, you get good results. It's as simple as that. That's kind of our story in a nutshell. I could speak for hours about it if you let me. But
that'll be on another show. Go ahead,
Brady.
Ryan.
We're craftsmen to varying degrees, and we always enjoy talking to other craftsmen and bespoke products and little things. JD does a lot of tinkering himself, and we all value what we're doing here. But at the same time, we don't give anybody a pass just for making something by hand. It's gotta work, and it's gotta be durable and accurate and everything else. And so I think just one of the first questions people are going to have is, what is the difference between hydrometers out there on the market?
Okay, well, the first thing you'd have to understand is the quality of the glass. We typically use a German style glass, or glass that's sourced at the same level of quality as a German style glass. German glass, they've been making glass for many years. The glass, it expands at a minimal rate, which allows you to maintain the life of the hydrometer. If you're gentle with it, it'll last longer than a competing hydrometer. As well, our accuracy is surpassed just by that's the handwork. When you just mentioned handwork and where's the value in the handwork? Every one of our hydrometers goes in front of a person that actually calibrates each one of these perfectly. That's a big deal. When these get mass produced, that sometimes gets overlooked, and the calibration of these things get passed through in bulk quantity, and they go out to the distributor. We take the time, we care for every one of these things, and when it goes out, it has my name on it, as well as it has government backing, so you can trust that these things were calibrated relative to a government standard, they're very expensive tools. We have to get them recalibrated annually, and what winds up happening is people that don't use the standards, other countries, they don't actually hold themselves to the standards that we do. They don't have to go through the processes to do this. It's just something we have to do. So the calibration, very important. The materials, the ballast in a hydrometer, lots of them are toxic. Ours are non-toxic. It costs a little more to do non-toxic ballast in a hydrometer. That's very important. If you were to have breakage, you wouldn't want to contaminate any liquid. Now you got to understand, we don't just work in the brewing industry, in the winemaking, in the moonshine. We work for diesel fuel. We work for batteries. We work for maple syrup processing. We work for a whole variety of industries, and sometimes you can't have any sort of toxins near your food. I mean, I know when you're making beer and stuff like that, you typically, you throw away your sample when you're done. We don't usually. We sip it. But if you get rid of the liquid, it's one thing. But toxicity is an important part of our process. Heat treating our instruments. When we're done with creating our instruments, we heat treat them, which is an expensive process. But we feel it's important because it takes all the strains out of the glass. And you'll find when you use our instruments, that you kind of bounce them around a little bit, they're much less likely to break because of that process that we implement. As well as service, one of our important facets of our business is we try to talk people through having these hydrometers last forever. If anyone's ever owned one, the Achilles heel of a hydrometer is the fact that you can break it. You take it to the sink and wash it. Next thing you know, it's in two pieces. It hurts our heart when you break instruments. It really does. We do not want to hear that story of how it breaks. We like to talk you through it. We sell equipment, rack systems, where we can explain to you the best way to use these. And it all comes back to just trying to get a hydrometer that you can keep for a lifetime.
I have a confession.
Yeah.
I got a confession to make.
Let's hear it.
As many times as Ryan has busted these 5 and 6 gallon carboys, I couldn't tell you how many freaking hydrometers that I've broken. And so after the third or fourth one, I thought, you know what, the hell with this. I'm ordering 2 at a time. So every time I order,
yeah.
So I got like 6 hydrometers sitting around the house. So,
oh Lord, JD, you sound like a perfect candidate for one of our rack systems.
I'm looking.
Telling you.
Yeah.
We take our hydrometers, we take them out of a wooden rack, you put them into your test jar, which is included in our rack. You take a reading, you run it underwater, and you drop it right back in the rack. End of story. It doesn't go anywhere else. It doesn't get laid on the end of a table to roll off. It doesn't get put in a box of junk for your brewing for the next time you brew.
Yep.
It goes in the rack. That is one of the key elements of maintaining the integrity of a hydrometer. Let me tell you.
Yeah. Go ahead, Jeff.
I was going to say, I broke 2 hydrometers last year alone. Not proud of that fact, but they, like you said, they're fragile little things. They are tiny, thin little glass pieces, and I too have been eyeing the racks and the combo sets. I think your deluxe winemaking one even comes with a little wine thief in there, which that just tells me it's easier to fill up that test glass in the first place. So, I've been eyeballing those hard, man.
Now, when you look at them, you may be taken back. You may think, "Wow, that's a bit of money for these products." But when you break it down and realize what you're getting, as well as the quality that I just explained that you get from buying a product like this, and then add the service in, and add being able to call us, explain an issue, or have us explain to you just a couple troubleshooting methods that could keep these things alive. I'm telling you, these things will last hundreds of years if you just use them properly. And typically that's why they break. And I understand the situation. We're sitting there, we're brewing something up, we're probably drinking something from the last time we brewed. You know what I mean? So it's not as though we're some of the most graceful people while we're sitting here brewing. So I understand that. But you be systematic about it. You use your hydrometer, you pull it right out. rinse it, drop it in the rack. I'm talking, that's it. At that point, this thing can sit till eternity.
Yeah. You know, they have fallen off of shelves. I wasted an entire 5-gallon batch of mead one afternoon because I dropped the hydrometer in and went all the way to the bottom. I heard it hit the bottom, and I knew I knew by the sound. Okay, and it bounced back up to the top, and the bottom part of the hydrometer was missing, and there was this jagged glass on the end. I thought, holy crap. You know, so, you know, I learned my lesson there. So I'm very gentle with them now, but, you know, Ryan, one of the most important tools that we can have in our toolbox is the hydrometer. And one of the questions that I have for you, Brady, is the calibration.
Yes, sir.
You know, typically the hydrometers that we buy at the local brew store, I mean, they're 10, 12, $14, so usually typically less than $20. I mean, they're basically a dime a dozen, okay? You know, and I don't know that I trust the calibration on some of them because some of them are. Yeah, go ahead, Ryan. You can probably go into this better.
Yeah, this is where I was going too.
Yeah, go ahead.
If you talk to home brewers, you know, in anything, you know, wine, mead, beer, cider, anywhere there, you're going to hear a story about how their hydrometer reading was wrong, you know, and they got a refractometer or a different hydrometer. On this very show, there was a pro who even told us that his commercial sized batch, he kept getting the wrong reading on, and then he had to go get a different hydrometer to get the correct reading. For any of our listeners, I'm not gonna say who that was, but I'll say it's in the archive. If you find it, you know, let me know, and if you're the first one, I'll send you a bottle of Vag mead. But no, I mean, I'm talking even pros in commercial settings have talked about how their calibration was wrong, which is why, I mean, somebody listening to this show, I mean, let's be honest, might say like, oh, geez, we're going to talk about hydrometers. That sounds exciting. But no, it's very important. It's like JD was saying, if there's one tool, and all three of us have recommended, you know, the first tool you need is a good hydrometer. So I guess a couple of questions with that calibration, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but have you kind of gauged any of the maybe the lower priced hydrometers to see what the spread is on what their readings are, or even if you know, like why their readings go awry sometimes?
Oh, you had to get me started, didn't you? You had to get me. I just thought to myself, boy, is he going to ask this? Yep, he's going to ask this. All right. So,
we're going to ask.
So yes, we've checked, and we spent a certain amount of time checking. See, and here's what it comes down to. I mean, you can probably assume what the results that we have found, right? The idea is, in America, when you build a tool, you have a standard that you must go by, okay? When you buy something from other countries, which we got to be honest with each other, fellas, when we buy when we buy the cheap item that seems abnormally cheap in price, you know, it's typically overseas. There's a variety of countries that make things for America right now.
Right.
They don't have to go by the standards that we go by. There's no laws that say they have to make products that have to adhere to a standard. Yeah. So when you buy something cheap, what happens? I mean, I always use the analogy. You can go down to a tool warehouse. There's cheap tool warehouses around in different states and different towns, right? You can go buy a 62-piece ratchet set with every socket, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, for like $15.
Yeah.
You get the whole socket set. Now you can go to Snap-on and get that, and they'll nail you for about $1,500 for that same set, right?
Right. Yeah.
And it's because their stuff uses materials and it uses standards that they go by, and they have a product that they sweat. They sweat the details over this stuff, right? When you're talking about calibration, when I purchase a standard or when I make a standard and I send it down to NIST, the National Institutes of Standard and Technology, when I send them a standard for them to verify that this is accurate, it costs me about $1,500 just for them to say, okay, that's accurate.
Wow.
And they send it back to me. Now I have to take that standard for every hydrometer that we produce, and I have to baby that standard and make sure it doesn't get broken. And I have to use that standard right next to every hydrometer that I produce. So if I take one that I'm making, one that we're bringing right down the line, we're going to put it right next to a standard that we paid $1,500 for, right?
Yeah.
So that right there allows us to make sure that these products are dead on. So when you talk about a cheaper hydrometer, what you're paying for is something that doesn't even have a standard. I mean, it could be a 12-inch ruler that's 12 and a half inches long, and you don't know any better, but you just know you paid 69 cents for it. You know, that's a kind of a mindset. I think as Americans, we need to kind of get over that. And like typically, you can go get a hydrometer for $10-15, right, JD?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Our hydrometers, I think our hydrometer is a triple scale hydrometer, which is our least, the least costly hydrometer. I think we get $17 for it. So it's not like it's a world of difference. We still sweat the details, and that triple scale hydrometer that you buy still is as accurate as our precision hydrometers, like our rack systems that you saw online. They're about $100 or so. When you buy that rack system, that comes with 3 hydrometers and a thermometer and a wine thief and a test jar and that rack, which is like gold. That thing is priceless. When you're buying that, you're buying more of a Snap-on system. And then, like I said, you take a little bit of technique that we can give you about using your hydrometer. These things last forever. But, you know, back to your question about the accuracy. The accuracy is through the ability of a person to take and, by comparison, calibrate these hydrometers right next to a hydrometer that's been checked out, certified by the United States. That's the difference.
Yeah.
That's great. So, Brady, I want to switch gears here just for a minute. You said that you're getting into brewing, and you recently put together your first batch of mead?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Tell us about that. Tell us what you put together.
Well, you have a longtime listener friend of mine. His name's Travis.
Yep.
And are you familiar with Travis?
I think I've heard the name. We'll go into the last name later on, but go ahead.
Yeah.
With it offline.
He's part of our brewers group. So on Sundays we all get together and we brew something up. It could be anything. It could just be a brew up a batch of fun for all we know sometimes. But we were brewing, and he said, you know what? Let's get some mead going. I'll teach you guys how to do some mead. I said, well, that sounds great. I've never done it before. Let's give it a try. He said, all right. And we sent out a group text and said, hey, we need we need this, that, and we need 15 pounds of honey. And I went straight to my friend who started his honey from a hive that I gave him in my barn. I had a barn. We have an old barn that we work out of, an old farmhouse and a barn that we do all of our business out of, and we restored it into our business. I had this hive, and I gave it to him, and he started doing honey. I think he got about 1,000 pounds of honey this year, and I said, wow. I'll call him. And we called him, and he got me 15 pounds of wildflower honey. And Travis said, well, that'll be great. We'll get some yeast, and we got some, is it pronounced Kveik or Kveik?
Kveik, yeah.
Yep. Oh, my Lord. We took that, and now, understand, I've only brewed a few times, maybe 6 or 8 times we've brewed, and you go through the brewing process. It's, you have to be on your toes. You have to know what you're doing. It's not something that is not a kind of a ready-mix thing. And he brought the mead over. We took the honey, we put some water in it, and we put the yeast in it. He said, we're done. And I thought, oh my Lord, you mean to tell me that's the whole process?
Yeah. I
And
love
I
it.
said, boy, oh boy, I think I could get into this.
Oh my God.
So we pitched the yeast, and one of our fellows in our little brew group here said, I bet you that starts chewing on that before we even leave here today. And wouldn't you know it, before the last guy left, there it was. The airlock was bubbling away. It was bubbling away. And by the next day, the airlock looked like it was straight boiling. It looked like it was. I couldn't believe that, and as how aggressive that yeast took hold of that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was amazing. That truly was.
Yeah, that yeast is it's a monster. I'll tell you that. We've got stories of it just chewing through a must or a wort in hours. But yeah. Well, Brady, it's been great chatting with you. I want to go around the table one more time and just, if anybody, Jeff or JD, if you've got any parting thoughts here for Brady.
Well, yeah, I do. One, actually, a couple of questions. Brady, where do you live?
Oh, we're in Lycan, Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. Okay.
We're in the center of Pennsylvania, and we're out in farm country. And like I said, we're in an old barn, and we restored it about 20 years ago. My wife and I, and yeah, we just enjoy the mountains around us, and we have a heck of a team of a workforce around here that really has made our company grow. It's truly the backbone. Central Pennsylvania, really, we're right in the middle of coal country.
Yeah.
Which coal's we've heated our world for so long with it, and it's just generated a bunch of people that really know how to do the job and get the job done. And I have to say that's one of our real strong points.
Well, you'll be happy to know that Kveik yeast actually performs very good at low temperatures and extremely high temperatures in excess of 100 degrees. So, so keep that in mind. Hey, second thing, I'm on the website
Yes.
for our listeners out there. A lot of products there. Now, I'm not fermenting any kind of diesel fuel.
Hope not.
I'm doing beer and I'm doing meads. Okay, yeah. What is the best solution for me when it comes to your products there? Right now I'm looking at the Precision Brewing Hydrometer System.
Well, you just said it, JD. That's exactly what I would recommend to anybody.
Perfect.
At any level, whether you're doing mead, wine, moonshine, or beer. Any one of them, yeah. You can take specific gravity. You got to understand one thing. When you're talking about any type of language, you got bricks, you have diesel fuel languages, everything comes from specific gravity. Yeah. Now, a specific gravity hydrometer can be converted into any language. Plato, some people use Beaumet. There's so many different languages. Potential alcohol. All these languages, they all deviate from specific gravity. So if you have a specific gravity hydrometer system, which that Precision Brewing Hydrometer System that you just talked about, when you have something like that, you can take a reading, and with just a couple keystrokes on your computer, you can convert that to nearly any other language. So don't feel as though you need a Brix hydrometer or you need a Plato hydrometer. You don't. You need specific gravity because it's all based on specific gravity. Okay. So like you said, that kit right there, that's a professional model. That could be taken. You could be just one dude in a basement making it, or you could be a professional brewer making barrel after barrel of your product, and you could use that hydrometer system.
Like I said at the top, I mean, this is if you didn't have anything in your brewing toolbox, if nothing at all, this is the one tool that you need to have. And I dig the precision level, that you're talking about here with your product. I think that is where it's at. I mean, I'm tired of dealing with. Yeah, I mean, I have my doubts. I mean, these $15 hydrometers out there. How do I know that they're precision? I don't know. I don't know if they're on the money or not. I mean, I have no freaking idea. I mean, I might be brewing a mead at 15% alcohol when it's really 12%. I mean, I have no idea. But good stuff, Jeff. Throw the mic over to your side of the table, bud. Let's close it out.
Sure. I think we've covered the stuff that I really wanted to hear about. You know, the quality level and why. I honestly think I'm sold. Geez. No, Brady, let's get a plug for your website, your business, and I know it's BradyInstruments.com.
Yes, sir. BradyInstruments.com, and you can certainly get into our website. You can contact us any way you want. If you want to email us, if you want to call us and have a conversation, we really appreciate talking to people and explaining our products to them. And if you're local, please stop by. No sweat at all. We just appreciate people who can appreciate us.
Very good. Well, Brady, hey, thanks for joining us tonight, man, and lots of luck at your company. You're producing one of the best pieces of equipment that home brewers need to have in their toolbox, and we certainly appreciate you coming on and actually informing us about the difference between a quality product that we should be using versus something a little less expensive that might better fit our pocketbook. And when I tell you, when we're brewing, I mean, when you're doing this kind of thing, even if you're doing it at home, you need precision equipment. So really appreciate the input.
Oh, well, you're welcome, guys. It was a pleasure. It was certainly a pleasure for me. You guys are awful fun to talk to. And I appreciate the opportunity to just enlighten people like you're hoping to do. I really appreciate the opportunity. Thanks again.
You bet. And I'm actually in the process of ordering that precision hydrometer right now. Brady, thank you, guys. And we'll talk soon.
Thank you. Good night, guys. Take care.
Good night. Jeff, you hit it out of the park, dude. That was probably one of the, I don't know. I just, like I said, this is, having a hydrometer that you can trust. Okay. Batch after batch after batch, because I honestly, I buy these, and I'm not kidding, guys. When I go buy a hydrometer, I buy 2 at a time. Because with my arthritic hands, I mean, I drop them on the floor, and I just, it gets to be ridiculous after a while. And I don't know whether, that's one thing. The second thing is, I don't know how accurate these things really are. To be honest with you, I mean, when you're paying $14, $15, you just don't know. I don't know.
Well, and this is, you hit the nail on the head. So did Ryan. We've heard stories about people having hydrometers that were a little bit off. And if you think about it, that basic hydrometer that you got, the only thing holding that little piece of paper that you're using as the guide in there is really, it's the coefficient of static friction and the paper unrolling inside that little glass cylinder.
Exactly.
That's it. I mean, I think if you bonk that hydrometer on the bottom of your carboy enough and not enough to break it, but hard enough, I'm pretty sure you could fidget that little piece of paper pretty easily. So there's even not a guarantee that if you buy something, and it's pretty good in the first place off the rack, that over time it's not going to mess up on you. I don't think I've had a hydrometer that I had a lifespan long enough to worry about that. But yeah, it's something we don't consider often enough, I think.
Yeah. Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, I just want to keep it basic and just say, we've said time and time again, especially to the newer folks, the most important piece of equipment that you can have, or the first piece of equipment you should buy, is a hydrometer. And having a reliable and durable hydrometer is the key to giving you, your best product.
Yeah. Good stuff. Go ahead, Jeff.
I was going to say, as much as we're kind of drooling over these, these multi-hydrometer rack systems and stuff like that, he made a great point that they've also got their basic triple scale hydrometer for $18, which is not a huge jump in price to get something that is that well calibrated.
Yeah. Yeah, at least you're getting a guarantee with it, That's something that I don't get with these other. Yeah, I mean, and clearly it says made in China on my, hydrometers that I do get. So, I mean, come on, give me a break. They're not going to guarantee anything. You know what I mean? So at least I know I'm getting a quality American-made product from Brady Instruments. And as I go through this process, I'll have to keep working on this. But I am ordering the Precision Brewing Hydrometer System from Brady Instruments. So maybe I'll put a little more about that in the show notes when we get there. In the meantime, hey, segment 2, session meets. We've talked about these before. I really think these are the way to go. I think more and more people are getting into these. I see a lot of tasting rooms. You go around, you look at different mead sites, mead making, the professional mead makers who have tasting rooms and whatnot. I think a lot of them are starting to offer these session meads, whether they're carved, uncarbed, what have you. I really think that's the way to go. But I think, Ryan, people like to sit and chat and coming out of conversation. You may be there with another couple. You want to make a night of it. Usually these tasting rooms have either small plates or appetizers, something you spend a couple of hours over and enjoy. I mean, you don't want to sit there and just drink, a 6-ounce pour of a 14% mead and call it done. I want to sit there long enough to at least maybe have a couple, And so session meads, made to drink over and over while you're sitting in one place. Like I said, as long as you know red lights from green lights on the way home.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we were trading emails, and Jeff brought this up, and he kind of mentioned at the top of the show here. He's starting we're getting back on an eating program or a dietary program, and wants to, watch his carbs. Right. And wants to be able to drink, and he doesn't want to drink ultra diet beer. Right. And so what can he make and what can he do that will fit that? And I said, well, almost everything I made lately would fit that session category. And not only that session category, but really highly attenuated. I tell you that most of my stuff is probably around 6% ABV, and very refreshing. It's not overly heavy. It's not overly sweet. It's the type of thing, as JD said, you can have a couple of, a few of, and so that's kind of what got us started. And I know we want to talk a little bit about how we approached these. I'll tell you a couple ways that I do it, and then I'll let Jeff kind of riff on what he's thinking about. So. Couple of questions, hey, how do you get a 5% mead? If your yeast will go to 15% or 14% or something like that.
Right.
And then how do you how do you make sure that it's not watery, or how do you maintain some mouthfeel? Well, I think I'll take both of those. Number one is let's say the mouthfeel. You understand. I think it's also understanding what you're having. Drink a Pilsner, and then drink a Cabernet, and you're going to have two very different mouthfeels. And if all you ever do is drink, maybe Zinfandels or Cabernets, if you have a Pilsner, you're going to think it's just water. But if you drink Pilsners, you probably don't think that. So I think part of it is just understanding what your calibration right now is. Are you somebody who is just used to the really big, heavy, mouth coating stuff, or are you somebody that does go across the spectrum a little bit and have that? Now, the other side of that is is what else you're using. If you're just using honey, you want to make a traditional session mead, for example. You can use some products, Opti White, Opti Red, maltodextrin, something like that to give it a little more mouthfeel. I've used maltodextrin before. It was absolutely, a little pinch of that will punch it right up. The other thing would be if you're using like braggots, some malts, even if you're just steeping the grains, are going to provide a little more body in there for you. And then the alcohol thing, the way I would approach this is, you want to ferment it. You want to let the yeast go as low as it'll go. So I say that one of the formulas I use is maybe 1 pound to 1.25 pounds or so of honey per gallon. So let's say one pound per gallon, or maybe 1.25 pounds per gallon, somewhere in there. And your yeast, when it goes as far as it'll go, it takes everything up. We'll leave you with that 5, 6, 7% alcohol by volume. And then at that point, you can drink it dry. That's what I usually do. I usually take it dry, and I like it like that. Or you can from there then really just stabilize and back sweeten. If you want to sweeten different ways, maybe different fruit juices or fruits or more honey or something like that. But that's going to be more practical than saying I've got the gravity potential in here to hit 10% ABV, but at 5% I'm going to cold crash it and then try to stop fermentation and go from there. Excuse me. So that's a couple of things I do. Session meads also, you can do like a base traditional and then build off of that. If you're going to do melomels or metheglins or fruit and spice, and it'll give you more control as well. Especially like somebody like JD who wants to just add, like Amaretti, you finish off the fermentation of your base traditional, and then you can start adding a couple little drops of, say, blood orange or blueberry or tangerine or something like apricot, and just kind of dial in exactly where you want that flavor. So that's a little bit of how I have approached session meads and kind of the immediate direction I might go. Jeff, what are you thinking to make your keto-friendly sessions?
Well, and yeah, my sessions start off pretty much the same way you've outlined. For the most part, I've been going about 1.5, maybe closer to 2 pounds per gallon for my must, going in that 7 to 8% range. But I'm going to dial that back down to 5% just for control, drinkability, and just to make sure that I'm hitting my targets here. I think at the end of the day, one glass of a 5% alcohol is still a decent thing. It's the same as a beer. So my plan is generally to target like a specific gravity of about 1040 and pitch a yeast that I know is going to eat up every last little bit of sugar. I might throw some fruit in primary. The cranberry mead that I'm drinking tonight, even though I've said it doesn't taste great, cranberries without some sweeteners, they just don't work. In the case of this one, the ones that I bottled for the holidays, I back sweetened with, I want to say, around 5 or 6 ounces of honey in each gallon, and then used a little tincture with some different spices in them to kind of liven that up. And probably moving forward, I won't back sweeten anything. I'm probably going to take it bone dry. My plan is to add more flavor through things like, having some fruit in primary, along with, like you said, the Opti Red, Opti White. I've got some, I think it's called Rouge Boost that I've been using as well, and going to try that. There are a host of little additives that I think I can push things a little bit further with. Another thing that I considered and I think would be great is something along the lines of just using this in a hopped mead. I did a little bit of research, and it's hard to say exactly, what kind of sugars like dry hopping contributes, but somebody had estimated that it's about 3% by weight sugar. And I figure if I'm putting 1/4 of an ounce into a gallon of mead, 3% of 1/4 of an ounce is hardly anything at all. Especially when I break that into like little 12-ounce glass servings. So I'm not terribly worried about that. And I figure if I put that in fermentation, the yeast will still get a chance to chew on that too. As far as like finishing it off, like you said, I think it is a lot easier to start with, a quantity of honey that's going to hit the target alcohol I want, and then try to, make the flavor done, stabilize, and then if you are inclined to back sweeten, which for this project I am not, but generally I do just a little bit to get some sweetness in there, that's a good time to do it. I've got a small, like 1.75 gallon keg now that I'm planning to just, put my my small, little trial batch in first, and then 5-gallon kegs. This is an easy thing to make 5 gallons of. At the end of the day, we're talking about 5 to 7.5 pounds of honey at tops. I think if I can dial in the flavor, I'm going to be in great shape.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like where you're going, Jeff. That's my world, right now. The other thing that I think we've talked about, but it's worth saying again, is just the cost of mead and of making it, and that spectrum. So, for example, Brady was saying, his buddy said, "Hey, let's get 15 pounds of mead." I don't know how big their batch was, but let's just say it was 5 gallons. They're 15 pounds of good honey.
Yeah,
is going to cost you some money. I make 5 pounds of a session mead. I might use 6 pounds of honey. Something like that. So, yes, it's a very different product. It's going to be very different than let's just say wine strength to beer strength, and the flavor, the mouthfeel, the aroma. Yes, of course, all that's going to be different, but what did we talk about the last week I was here, 2 weeks ago? Brew to drink. Brew what you like, brew what you're going to drink, and do that. And that's what I like, frankly, and the fact that I'm using about 1/3 of the amount of honey, and if you 1/3 of the amount of the ingredient cost, not a bad bonus.
You know, I don't know I don't know where you guys live, but you know, out here in California, honey has become almost. I mean, it's like it's almost like a bar of gold. Okay, I mean, I've noticed the prices in the store. The Ralph store that I shop at, they don't even carry the 5-pound bottles of honey anymore. Not even. Okay, I mean, they used to keep quite a bit of it on the shelf, but not anymore. You know, they come in a little 1/2 pound, you know, 3 ounce, 2 ounce. I mean, these little tiny bottles of the most useless size. You know, you might be lucky to find a 1-pound bottle of honey. And some of the raw honeys that they sell, it's like $20. So, I mean, I don't know where you're getting your honey from, but yeah, the stuff is at least out here is becoming more and more expensive, and you know, maybe hard to get. I don't know. I feel bad because I really want to. I'm going to start getting into these session meats. I'm tired of dumping 15, 20 pounds of honey into a fermenter. I kind of feel bad because I get my honey from this local beekeeper. You know, I buy a bucket at a time from him, and I mean, he gives me a damn good price, but I don't, you know, I mean, when I was buying a bucket every 6-8 months, I don't need but one every couple of years now. You know what I mean? So, so I'm looking at, I mean, it's not only a conservation thing, but more importantly for me, it's the matter of being able to make a braggot, which is what I'm into, mead. Okay. Even if you just make a straight up mead, and I actually have one of those sitting in a keg, that's aging on some wood. It's just a straight up wildflower, 15% mead. You know, waiting for me to do something with. But I'm looking for something that the neighbors will enjoy. During the summer times, you know, we usually all get together out on the patio here by the pool, barbecue time. You know, I want something that I can be able to, you know, I can drag a, you know, plastic trash can out with and stuff a keg into, fill it full of ice and have my little picnic tap on it, you know, and, you know, let the neighbors enjoy too. So I'm looking for something easy to brew. I mean, you know, I told you before, I'm going strictly Amaretti. I'm not going into all of this, you know, real fruit thing anymore. I don't want to deal with all that. And so the question, Ryan, is, you know, being able to produce a session mead, providing a decent mouthfeel to make you want to go back and get another glass. Okay. And then dealing with the flavors I got pretty much nailed down. That's usually going to occur at High Krausen or during secondary. That we've already established on several other shows here at the Meat House. But getting to the mouthfeel part, okay, because you're dealing with so little honey, so little malt. How do you get to a point where you've got something that's really, you know, going to bring you back to the keg?
Well, I think part of it is training your palate. And like I kind of said a few minutes ago, if you drink nothing but, you know, big, high gravity, sweet fruit bombs, your palate is going to be calibrated a little bit differently than somebody who drinks, you know, dry, session strength, sparkling, you know, meads. So I think part of it is just understanding your palate's current calibration or your taste buds' current calibration and saying, yeah, you know, if I go from one end of the spectrum to the other, it's going to be a little shocking. Now, with that, like I've mentioned a couple of things. I actually don't mind. I don't have the sharpest palate. I'll be the first to acknowledge. I can sit down with like some really good, BJCP judges or guys, and like some of my friends, Al Boyce or Kevin Mensman, and they will pick up things in a mead that I might not right away. I might maybe have to go back and think about them, or maybe I just missed them completely. I won't get them completely. So I don't have necessarily the sharpest palate in the world, but I've also got a fairly delicate one in that I can pick up some nuance and the delicacy and appreciate that in a mead, in a session mead, or even a session beer, or a light wine, or something like that. And so, again, number one, just understanding and kind of retraining your palate a little bit. And sometimes things go seasonally. If you're a seasonal drinker, you just might notice that, if you drink that big mellow in the middle of the summer, it might taste off the way it tastes in the winter for you. Or if you end up having that coconut lime session drink in the middle of the winter, it doesn't taste quite as the same way it does in the summer. But anyway, kind of moving on to the next point. Again, there are things that you can do to punch up the mouthfeel. You can brew, or you can make your must with, like we talked about, you can add some Opti-White, some Opti-Red, some maltodextrin. You can also just like steep like dextrose malts, and then make your must with the water. Like you steep some of those malts and then boil it, and then let it cool down, and then add your honey, and you've now put some kind of starches in that must that are going to not ferment all the way out and give you some more mouthfeel that way. There's different ways to do it that can do it. But I mean, before I start telling people, oh, make sure you add 2 grams of this per gallon, or make sure you use a quarter pound of that per batch. It's your, first of all, just understand where your palate's at, and then and try to work with that a little bit as you're developing what you want out of a mouthfeel.
I like subtle flavors. I'm not opposed. What I don't like, I gotta say this in the right way, because I've had some fantastic meads out there made by some of the most phenomenal home mead makers, and of course I'm referencing back to both the Iron Bee and the after parties after the Valkyrie's Horn. But what I tend to want to shy away from are the heavy fruit type meats. Okay. I like subtle flavors. If you can give me a hint of raspberry, or a hint of peach, or a hint of apricot, I'm more apt to go back to the keg and get another glass of that than I am to go back and get something that's just a massive, blackberry and black raspberry, full on, type of melomel. Okay, I can only do so much of that. I want something that's going to take me back to the keg.
I mean, it's been a few years now, but I used to work for the corporate headquarters of the largest corporation that sold the most on-premise beer in the world, and
Coors.
What keeps people going back is dry. It's dry, right? So you're going to go back and you're going to have that second, third, and fourth, Pilsner. You're not going to go back and have that second, third, or fourth peanut butter stout.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Let's just pretend they're both at 6% ABV. I'm not even talking about like a Russian Imperial Stout or something like that. I'm just saying, let's just say you've got something sweet and something dry, and they're both the same ABV.
Yeah.
You're going to go back and have the dry one. You're going to want that second, third, or fourth pint of that dry one. Then, you might maybe finish a pint, or you probably got it in a smaller glass of the sweeter one. So the other thing to consider is naturally when something's dry, you're going to drink more of it.
Yeah. I got a question for Jeff. You entertain quite often. In your circle of friends that you shared your mead with, what's the tendency there? I mean, do they prefer things that are light and airy and session like, or do they prefer things that are a little heavier bodied, like a red wine type of thing, or white wine type of thing? What are you finding out there when you share your meads with people that you entertain with?
My friends are fairly smart in that they know that if they complain about the mead, I'm going to stop making it for them or stop letting them have it.
I love it.
At least they think so.
Yeah.
That said, I can tell you, everyone is happy to get mead at a party. And we've done a number of these like all day events. Like last year, we did a big party for my wife for her birthday, and I had like 2 or 3 kegs out. I tell you though, the stuff that goes the fastest is the stuff you can drink more of. That we had. I keep going back to that blueberry hopped mead. I had the appearance on that podcast that I made it for, and then we had a dinner party later that week. We cut probably a half of that keg between about 10 people. Not even 10 people. I think maybe 8 in one, like probably 3 or 4 hour evening. Yeah. People just kept coming back, kept tapping, drinking, enjoying, because it was light, it was fruity, it had a good flavor to it, and it was very easy to drink. So as far as turning over kegs, you're definitely going to get volume going if you get something that people will come back for. And I found the same thing with like ciders or other, lighter, fun drinks. It's really easy to just say, okay, let's do this.
Yeah, I don't know what it is about my cider. I can't keep enough of it in the keg. And I really don't want to be, start making, 10-gallon batches of the stuff.
Right.
People tend to know when I brew, when I'm making cider. I mean, they see me walking into the house with like, these huge, bags of gallon jugs of apple juice. And they seem to know that, in like 6 months, we're all going to be knocking on your door looking for a glass of that cider that you brew. So try to keep that a secret around here. Good luck. Ryan, I think we've pretty much beat this horse to death. I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about it again on future episodes. But I'm excited to get started again. I've been a little lazy over the winter. Of course, I haven't, my health, that I was sick for a while. And I mean, I'm just starting to get back into the swing of things here. I'm getting excited the more we talk. We're back online here with the show. I'm really looking forward to putting together something. I got 50 pounds of DME sitting here, so I got to do something with it. The wife says, what are you going to do with all that malt? Well, I'm going to make stuff, hon. Along this 5 gallons of it is her stout recipe that she likes. But anyway, so, good talk about session meads. I just think, for the mead makers out, the home brewers, mead makers out there, even if you're a beer brewer looking to get involved into making mead, this might be the perfect place to start. because you can combine the two. I mean, we talk so much about braggots here. That seems to be the preferred thing for at least two of us here, as far as mead making goes. But I think for session meads, I mean, if you're entertaining, if you're looking to take it to the beach or whatever, family barbecue, whatever you want to bring people back to the keg. I just dig these session meads. In fact, I think one of the first, it was Aaron Martin who was on the show last week covering for Ryan. It was his braggot that he sent to me. There was basically a session. I think it was only like 5%. But dude, that thing knocked my socks off. I mean, I could not believe that you could get that kind of flavor and taste and everything out of just a few pounds of honey, a few pounds of malt, and have it come out that good. It was just outstanding. So anyway, that's where we're at with the session meads. Hey, you have Facebook friends. This is where we try to answer a few questions with no formal expertise other than what we've been able to experience in our own brew house here. So Ryan, you had a list of them here, dude. Let's start off with you. What do you got for Facebook friend?
Yeah, and well, JD, here's one that's right up your alley. This is from Mick. It's been a while since I used bourbon-soaked oak to add to a high-gravity brew. I was thinking of having the oak soak for 5 or 6 days and then add 1 or 2 ounces into my kegs for a few weeks. Does this sound too long or short? I know it will depend on personal taste, but I plan to keg condition some of these for up to a year. Thanks. So JD, how should he approach, bourbon soaking his oak, and how much should he do?
I think he's right on the money as far as soaking the oak in bourbon. I don't think it takes 2 weeks to soak the wood, because you're talking about, whether it's cubes or an oak spiral or what have you. It's not going to take that long for the bourbon to soak into the wood and saturate that wood. So this whole thing about soaking your wood for 6 weeks, you don't have to do that. Give it a week. I think you'll be good. More than a couple of ounces, though. I'm not quite sure how many ounces those spirals that I use are, but I know that they're more than a couple of ounces, probably 5 or 6 ounces. My best recollection is usually about an ounce per gallon. So if you've got a 5-gallon batch, you want to be soaking at least 5 ounces of wood product. Now, a medium toasted American oak spiral is what you want to use. Don't do French oak. You will not like the you won't like the results of that. Nor will you like the results of soaking Hungarian oak in bourbon. And if you don't believe me, go ahead and do it, and then just take a sip of the bourbon when you're done. You're not going to like it. American oak is the way to go. Now, even a lightly toasted American oak would suffice. I prefer the medium toast oak because I like to get that little bit of that barrel char as well. But you're looking at soaking in a keg for at least a minimum of 6 weeks. Now here's the deal: taste. I can't stress this enough. Taste. Weekly. I do mine weekly. I stick it in there. A week later, I'm tasting. A week after that, I'm tasting again. And I take notes. Every time I taste, I take a note. Am I getting any barrel flavor? Am I getting any bourbon flavor? What exactly am I tasting at this point? Until I get to the point where, I've got the taste parameters that I'm looking for. I'm looking for a little bit of that barrel flavor. I'm also looking for a little of that the common things that bourbon gives up, the caramels, the brown sugars, the vanillas, that kind of thing. And you can even back it up a little bit by putting, maybe a half a stick of vanilla bean, or maybe half a teaspoon of real raw vanilla extract as well. That's typically where I go with it. I hope that helps.
I think it did. Let's go to another one. Let's go to Devin. I'm thinking about making a dry hopped passion fruit sizer. A lot going on there. Dry hopped passion fruit sizer for a 5-gallon batch. I've never used hops before. Any advice on the best way to impart flavors? Also debating using passion fruit juice or a flavoring like amaretti. I'll answer the first half of this one. Here's the thing about dry hopping your sizer. Don't dry hop your sizer. Hops, great flavor on those. I think the combination sounds great. I'm just saying don't dry hop. It's going to make it really cloudy, really messy, and you're going to just to soak up a ton of your sizer by adding the hops. There's a guy, a friend of mine, Bob Stemsky, and a lot of brewers have heard about this guy. He's a Wisconsin guy. He's been on Basic Brewing Podcast a handful of times. He has his own website, and he talks through how to make essentially like a hop vodka tea. And what you're left with, if you go through this process, is essentially a bottle of crystal clear hop extract that you've made yourself. So you can use any kind of hops you want, Citra, Amarillo, Fuggle, whatever you want. But now you've got this crystal clear hop extract. And then you can add that as much or as little as you want to get your flavor. Now I like that because it does all those things that dry hopping I find negative. It's not going to soak up, and grab just a ton of your sizer and just soak up a bunch of your sizer. It's not going to leave it cloudy. It's not going to impart any vegetal flavors, by having the actual, hops sit on your sizer for too long. And it's going to give you way more control when you do some bench tests about how much of this hop tea extract or hop extract to put in to get just the flavor you want. As for using passion fruit versus amaretti, we already know what JD is going to say. So, it depends on what you want, really. I don't have too much of a preference, but I will tell you to watch out for the amount of pulp that is in, if you're going to use juice, whatever's in that, because you could end up, you buy a can or a jug or a jar or whatever it might be, and you might be surprised at how much pulp or sediment are in those, even if you think you're just buying straight juice. Jeff, what do you think about all that?
Agree wholeheartedly. Yeah. And I would definitely default towards, using a product like an Amaretti or something like that that's a little easier to use than pulp, kind of for that same reason that you're suggesting not dry hopping, because, it's just more crud that you've got to filter out. You're adding an amount of pectic enzyme, I'm sure, for the cider part of that in the first place. If you're adding more fruit, whole fruit to that, that's just more that you're going to need to kind of get everything to clear. If clear is important to you, I'm not the kind of person that stresses over clear every time, but I got to admit it's a beautiful presentation when I can pull it off. that hop extract idea is, I think, phenomenal. That really great idea for anything, where you're trying to maintain that clarity. But I think that's also a really good idea in the fact that, to me, passion fruit is a delicate flavor, and it could be potentially pretty easy to overdo it with the hops and kind of lose that passion fruit in, especially some of these powerful, the East Coast hops or the New Zealand hops or what have you that have those tropical fruit flavors, but aren't exactly subtle either. So being able to dial in that hop flavor drop by drop or milliliter by milliliter, that's a really interesting and I think really useful instinct there.
Absolutely. Hey, we're going to leave it right there for tonight. I'll tell you what, I got to throw another shout out to Sap House. I got my box today, and this Ecstasy of Gold, Evan Henderson and Ashfish Fine, you dudes have knocked it out of the park again with this one. And I got to say, my wife loves that maple peach. So I think the bottle's going to be gone tomorrow, and she's the only one drinking it. I don't know if I'm even going to get a sample. But good stuff here tonight, guys. Hey, thanks for listening and hanging out with us in this episode. Hey, special thanks to Brady Marzella. Brady Instruments, I just ordered the Precision Brewing set from them, bradyinstruments.com. I encourage those of you who are serious about your brewing experience at home, whether you're mead making or whether you're beer brewing, as long as you're not fermenting diesel fuel, dude, get over to bradyinstruments.com and get one of these gizmos, because I'll tell you, there's nothing better than USA made, and these things are guaranteed. They conform to standards unlike any other. So good stuff. bradyinstruments.com. Hey, and don't forget, let us know what you're brewing. We might even give you a call. Email us at info@themeadhouse.com or send us a message on Facebook or Twitter or both at The Mead House. In the meantime, happy mead making. That's it for this episode. Ryan, glad you're back, dude. Flip the lights off. Jeff, slam the door shut. We'll be back next week with episode number 148 of The Mead House. We're gone.